So last week, talked about release 1.4 status. We did some of the release. Today, a demos topics is one more step, but I think we won't ship today. We will do that on Thursday. This should be quick on Thursday because most of it has been done now. Status, unless does anyone have demo? No demo. Status. Let's see, Orchard 1, nothing new. Orchard Core. Starting from 10th here, this one. So Antoine updated 2605, addition security updates, set security stamp when user is disabled. Then fixing that, so adding the user disabled event handler. Update security stamp async when a user is disabled. Okay. This is to update when the last change on the user. So when it's disabled, we also update that now. Fix Bootstrap 5 left after migration from Bootstrap 4. Okay, some Bootstrap 5 issues, but that's expected. So many changes everywhere. Alignment and cards. There is a screenshot on the issue for the PR. This one from just now. Fixing some CSS things, clarification, placement, JSON documentation for dynamic parts. Bruno, the idea being that when you have a dynamic part, one that you create dynamically in the UI, the type is content part. So in the placement JSON, you need to use content part as the type and differentiator gallery part, the name of the dynamic part. Okay, so anytime you have an issue understanding something and then you got it, then you just create a PR like this on the documentation to help everyone else. This one from Azure, new contributor, who is fixing the way Redis sentinels are configured, or at least are read from configuration. So it's a lazy step. Now the configuration contains the state, the data, and then configuration options will be. No, configuration options will read the data, and configuration is actually not the string, and the options is lazily evaluated here to parse the values. Otherwise, it happens too early, and then the Redis connection is not correct. Leaflet update, which is a library for maps used in the localized field or localization field. So script update works with Bootstrap 5 also. Let's not try it. UseNLogHost to be used on IHostBuilder. So a new extension method such that you can call .use NLogHost on the new IHost from the minimal APIs in ASP.NET. Just a new helper method. Add documentation and core API. So many people are joining. So add documentation and core API with changes. But they join and they are not muted, so I have to mute the theories. Too many dogs. Spatial field. thank you to another localization field or location field, special field. Kind of weird. Just now updating the release notes for 1.1, explaining the breaking change because someone had an issue and they couldn't figure out why or when it happened. So now it's clear the schema has changed for the query API because now we can return the items count and not just the items directly. Widgets override zone tag helper load warning on the zone isn't a shape. There's some log to detect something that happens in your shape, such that you know what's happening when you do something like that. So describing the issue. This is not how looking. This is fine, sorry. This is totally fine. This is me. There is a plus here, so this is totally fine. Perfect. That's me being done. This is actually how logging should work. Good job. Remove no UI slider duplicating resource stock. Okay, easy one. Update .NET Test.Sdk. Update mock, update Castle. Oh, this one. Unmain. Ooh. I hope it's breaking anything, but it's a big change of improvements, but I wanted to merge main into 1.4, so kind of risky. This one is not risky, this one is not risky. New contributor and new contributor. Did we merge something from Mike? When did we do that? Because I know there's a PR, but is the PR ready? I'm not sure.
May the 5th.
This one, found it. Thank you. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, okay, good. That's not the one I thought about. Perfect. Questions, comments, topics? Soteris with all the best topics. Don't hesitate to throw us all the topics. Let's look at what's left. We have a PR for release 1.4. So it's funny because Mirage was here and Isham jumped on the same thing. So I had to have the same comments, and I will explain it live because I know they watched the meeting. So what we did in this PR, we updated the translations at all to 1.01 beta 20.019, and they're like, oh, why beta? And Isham was like, yeah, beta. It's just because before we ship the final version of this package on NuGet, we are trying the preview, the one on the Cloudsmith directly in this PR to be sure that it's working. And as it's working, we say, okay, it's working with the latest surcharge, we didn't mess up, so we can ship it on NuGet, which means this one then, when it's working, we say, okay, let's ship it. So we shipped it. 1.4, 5 days ago. And then we update this thing to 1.4 here. Okay, so that's why it's temporarily pointing to a beta. And by the way, we not only update the that's not what I wanted to show, this one. We not only update the version, but we also somewhere, why isn't it part of this commit? Oh, I made 2 commits. we also update a NuGet config to take this package from Cloudsmith, and then we revert it back to not use Cloudsmith. Okay, that's how we do the things. We're going back there, looking at the issue for that. Next step, just merge main, relaunch the test. I have a commit to do. That has been done. Oh, new update from Quest apps. I think it's Mike. This one has been included. What is this one? Oh. We need to check if it's 7. I will assign it, so we'll check. Need to check if it's a regression or not. Okay. We'll see. Issues. Milestones 1.4. So we still have 2 of them. So this one is new. This one, okay. Click older new post, but that's not show list of blog posts. Sure. Oh, that's a. Yeah, that's one we said we will fix. Okay, so we need to fix that too. Pull request. Careful with this one. If it's not fixing anything, then we don't take it. So late, at least. What? There is already a new strap. Okay, then we'll check the status of this PR on Thursday. Questions, comments, geo point field. So it's a special field, a geo point field. It's so many things. So Thierry, what's the topic for today?
Well, hello to everyone.
Hello.
I have a question in terms of Azure, if someone knows. In terms of memory and CPU, is it better to have an org chart with 2 tenants or 2 different deployments?
I bet it can only be better to have 2 tenants in terms of memory, definitely, and same thing in terms of CPU. And okay. What we measured is that it's around 10 megabytes to create a new tenant in memory. So let's say you start a new instance, it will take around 400 or 500 megabytes if you have a lot of memory on your machine, because it's also based on memory pressure. But if you have, let's say, 4 gigs or 8 gigs on your machine, it will take 500, something like that, when you start a new instance. If you create then a new tenant, it will take 10 more megabytes. So it's way cheaper to create a tenant than an extra web host. And when we measure that, we even create, so when I try to scale tenants, I have a script that generates hundreds. I would like create 1,000 tenants by just copy pasting. So what I do is that I have an app. Let me show you how to do that. Portrait. So here, let's see. CMS web. So how to test it? I'm creating, so when you have a new default tenant, you have a default folder. So I have an app that takes this folder and that will duplicate the full content. So I try to remove everything that we don't need, right? Just keep the database and app settings.json. That's it. Maybe the scene index so it doesn't process it. So that duplicates that and let be in a new folder called site1, site2, site3, and so on there. So it's cloning the folder, and I'm changing the content of this file. Here. So this is the same. So there is nothing to change in this file. That's interesting. Oh no, it's there. The tenants.json. I'm also changing that to have the tenant defined like site1, site2, site3, and so on. Okay, and so that's how it's creating tenants using SQLite. And then I start on thread, but the tenant is lazy loaded, which means if you don't hit an endpoint, then it won't load it. So I have a console app that will send a request to each of the tenants, site1, site2, site3. I just increment an integer and build the URL dynamically like this. And that loads all the tenants in memory. And that's how I measure that it's about 10 megabytes to load one tenant. So yeah, that can only be better. Then it's maybe harder to maintain. It's up to you. But technically, you can always take a tenant and split it out of the main host because it's just a folder to copy and all the settings and the data is based on that. So it's up to you. You can start with a tenant, you can start with a host, you can, and then change if you want, or even compare that, right? You could have the same site running in the tenant or in a different host and see how it behaves. In terms of perf, there is definitely an impact, but I'm not sure you can measure it because it's just about detecting what is the URL. So it should be like nanoseconds to find the correct match and to switch to the tenant. If you have a single tenant, then I'm not even sure it's looking for anything because it's a default, so it will just load the default. But that's super minor. It's like
I think that's fine, I guess, but yeah, makes sense. So I will try tenant. Is it the same behavior with Orchard 1?
Yes, but Orchard 1 was taking a little more per tenant. In Orchard Core, we measured that since the beginning. So and in Orchard 1, the biggest website multi-tenant we have is the weblogs.asp.net. And this one has how many? 800. Yes, it has 800 websites, and this 800 websites, so the story with this one is that we have 800 blogs, which are each, and it's running on one app service plan, okay? But it has 4 websites because this is a 32 bits. These are 32 bits websites, which means it's limited to 2 gigs of memory each site. And because it's limited, and the full machine has 8 gigs, okay? So because of that, I have 4 websites, which are limited to 248. Because if I had a single website, it will still be limited to 48 because of 32 bit. Okay, so I'm creating 4 of them, and they have, in this case, 200 blogs each, or a little less, like maybe 150 and it's maybe 700 or something like that. So it's split into different 4 websites such that it fits inside the 2 gigs. If you're on 64-bit, then you can use the full 8 gigabytes, but on a single website, because it was full framework, it had to be on 32 bits, and then we could only use 2 gigs of memory. That's why we have 4 websites for density. But with IHostBuilder, yes, it's 64 bits, so you can use a single website and use the 8 gigabytes of memory. That's the idea. The memory was a limiting factor. With 64 bits, it's no more a limiting factor. Okay. It's taking more memory. Each tenant is taking memory because it's running on 64 bits. All the pointers are twice the size, and usually that's almost all the memory that is used. So that an app on 64-bit will always take more memory than an app on 32-bit, but at least you can reach the 8 gigabytes of the service, the app, if you have 8 gigabytes. So it's actually easier to maintain than creating as many sites. It's not usually the limiting factor. It's just that on this one, we have so many tenants that so yeah, the IHostBuilder one, we were already doing that, but I think it was taking more memory than IHostBuilder last time we checked. That's the idea.
Okay, interesting. I was remembering the case of the web blogs. Yeah,
that's the only one I used. That's the one I made. I'm sure there are others. So, but at this scale, that's the one I know of. There were some big ones also, not sure one, but nobody never advertised it directly. I mentioned that in some sessions, some demos by the past. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So let's click. Still working beautifully. So it's the best, super fast. Scott doesn't blog anymore, but his blog is still there, right? Look at that, how fast this is. You click, boom, you have the results, all the archives and everything. Beautiful. There is caching, but it's cache provided by IHostBuilder, the output cache module, which we will have in IHostBuilder soon, right? Because ASP.NET Core will have in the .NET 7 the output caching feature, so we will be able to just have a module that enables that, and then we have output caching in IHostBuilder.
Donut casting as well.
Sorry.
Donut cache as well.
What do you mean, the .NET cache?
Donut.
Oh, donut. Maybe someone filed an issue to ask for that, and I will look into that. Today, what I'm sure it will do is the opposite, like maybe that's what you mean. The server-side includes such that you can cache everything, but replace that part, for instance, or the anti-forgery token, like IHostBuilder is doing.
Yeah, like widgets.
Yeah. So, but yeah, someone filed an issue actually on the feature with an example and an article to explain why they need donut caching. I need to check if, or at least to make it possible that it can be implemented later. But so far, I'm not looking into that. It will do stuff that are very advanced, though, very advanced compared to output caching in IHostBuilder and compared to other caching solutions. That would be great. We'll see. There is a session at the Build conference about that, so you can watch it. Other questions? And because it's part of ASP.NET Core, you will be able to use it in YARP, the reverse proxy, like Nginx can do. If you use Nginx today as a reverse proxy to cache, you can cache anything, but with YARP, we will be able to do that, yes.
Should we have an external module or implement something in Orchard for that when it gets up?
We'll make a module to enable the middleware.
Yeah.
That's it. And maybe set some configuration if you want to expose configuration in the admin. Like we will be able to evict the cache, for instance, from the admin. or parts of the cache, because we can define the tags like in Orchard 1, and we can then evict that. So that's something that we might want to expose in the admin to be able to evict the cache, everything from the cache. Or sections or different things, we'll see. So yes, we'll have a module for sure. So Thierry, more questions?
No, I'm fine. I was wondering if anyone has tried to migrate from Orchard 1 to Core, a simple blog, let's say.
There is no solution. You have to provide something. Someone was working on a WordPress solution, I saw.
Okay.
Yes, they made what did they do? They made a recipe and some migration code, I think, or just a recipe. Someone created a PR on an issue to explain how they are migrating from WordPress to Orchard Core with a recipe. And I suggested to create a module. That would be better to refactor the code as a module and embed the recipe or whatever. And they also they have a recipe that creates a workflow. So all the logic to import is inside the workflow, which is nice because you can customize then how you want to import stuff. But at the same time, it's a way to make it a workflow. So I suggest to have part of it as code and part of it as a workflow, or to make the workflow part of a module instead of a recipe. It will be the same for Orchard 1, the same technique. But there is nothing has been done, just talked about, just create the script that will take the data or the XML export to convert it to a JSON recipe. That's the only thing you can do. Either use a recipe or create a console app that will read the database to populate your application.
Yeah, probably the latter, but I was wondering if someone has.
Probably someone has done that, but not shared anything. There have been, if you look at the issues, people have done part of it, but nothing official.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll end the meeting there. Thanks everyone. See you on Thursday when we'll probably ship 1.4 officially, or next week for the next meeting. Bye-bye. Thank you.